Welcome everyone to Mail Fuzz TV. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, episode 4. It's called The Outside. So full spoilers for the episode. This one is directed by Ana Lily Amirpour, who I really like based on one movie. I really like A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night. It's a very stylish vampire movie. Not heavy on plot, but heavy on directorial flourishes. It's black and white. Is very atmospheric and ethereal. And what's so interesting about this episode is that the directorial style is very strong, but it's very different to that movie, which suggests that she has a lot of range as far as like the types of material she wants to cover. Obviously, it's also horror related, but it's a very different type of horror, and it's doing a very different type of story. The premise of this one is that we have a main character named Stacy, who is a quiet, kind of shy, I won't say introvert. Well, maybe she's introverted, but she's not. She sticks out versus all the other characters that she works with at the bank, where her job is, and all the other women there are all very kind of vapid. They're always talking. They're always gossiping about everyone else in town. They're always talking about the latest beauty products and things like that. And Stacy's always kind of left out, hence the title of the episode. She's on the outside of this kind of popular circle. She doesn't really fit into that, and the episode is very much about her desire to be a part of that, and very much about the pressures placed on people to have a sort of a certain standard of beauty. Particularly a big theme of the episode is the idea that television influences what we see as beautiful and what our unrealistic standards of beauty are. In particular with this, it deals with this idea of the late night adverts and commercials for different types of beauty products especially in this case, because that's a big part of the plot. But very, very much that kind of unrealistic expectation and standard, and this drive to be at any cost and that kind of thing. That's very much what this episode is about. It's what its main theme is, and it kind of explores into that, and I'm happy to say it's quite good at it. I've seen mixed opinions on this episode. Like, it seems to have landed differently with different people. I think the direction is so strong that I think it really catapults it. I think the back half of the episode especially, it gets really good with some of its kind of surreal visuals and stuff like that, which I'm going to talk about. The one critique that I would maybe agree with is that it is a touch on the long side. It's a full hour long, and I don't know if you necessarily needed it to be quite this stretched out. There's a lot of build up to the main character making certain choices that you probably could have condensed without really losing much of substance, I would say. But where this episode really shines for me is the direction. I think the performances are very good too, but the direction, there's a lot of little things. It's set at Christmas, so it's kind of a Christmassy episode, which ties into the kind of the commentary on keeping up appearances, but also the capitalist side of all this, which is all about driving industry and beauty products and how they kind of feed into one another. You've got that side of it kind of bleeding into the Christmassy element. But the opening of the episode is this kind of really beautiful like aerial shot going down the street, and you see all the Christmas lights and all the different houses, and it's very specific and very it's very distinct as a shot compared to the rest of the episode, just to kind of draw you in to everything. And from there you get a lot of stuff with the lenses in the episode, the camera lenses, and the way it handles depth of field. There's a lot of shots where you'll have like the co-workers, the ladies talking and gossiping about other people and being kind of bitchy about people, sort of talking about their problems, or being very over the top about their sex lives and talking about their husbands and their dicks and things like that. And there's a lot of shots where they'll be uncomfortably close in the foreground, and then you'll see Stacy, our main character, in the background. Especially there's a secret Santa party she's invited to, which her husband's a bit nervous about because they've always been kind of not necessarily mean to her, but always kind of excluded her, and he's wondering why she's so excited to go. But it's because she wants to feel included, she wants to feel a part of the popular group, that kind of thing. And there's a couple of very specific shots where you feel uncomfortable with the characters in the foreground because they're so in your face, and then she's separated and in the background, and you've got almost like a fisheye, not quite, but almost like a fisheye lens style quality to how it feels. And there's a lot of shots in this where the characters feel uncomfortably close, almost like they're in your face with their beauty, you know, and that's very subjective, but like the idea that they're very in your, because they're always talking about how good they look and how good this new lotion or good whatever it is making them feel, and talking about those kinds of subjects. So they're always kind of shoving it in your face. So the camera's kind of doing that as well throughout the episode, and also obviously does a great job of excluding Stacey from that group throughout, until of course the story includes her in that towards the end for various reasons. But yeah, I think the camera work is very good in this episode, and there's like a really strong tone to the episode, which is a little quirky, but never, it always feels, it would very much be comparable to, you know, a movie like May from, I want to say that's around 2000, which is this, it's about a woman who builds like a Frankenstein boyfriend, but very much in that you're sort of like following this like loner lead female character who's ostracized from the world and feels different. And there's other examples too, but that's the sort of thing that this makes me think of. And obviously it's talking a lot about the commercialism of this stuff, but and definitely the pressures, particularly upon women. I mean, obviously it can apply to men too, but this is very directly looking how it hits women in the world, and these unrealistic expectations, and how she feels ostracized for being a little different. And she has different hobbies. She's into taxidermy, for example, which I think is not an unintentional choice either, that taxidermy is about preserving just the physical appearance of the animals and not like what makes them from a personality perspective. So even that's kind of the superficial, just the visual layer of the people, which kind of comes back around towards the end of the episode again in a big way. So yeah, the main like horror component of this though is that after she is invited to the Secret Santa party, and her gift to the woman running it, who's like the head, you know, queen bee of the group, she gives her this taxidermy, what was it? It was a duck, I think it was. And they're all kind of weirded out because it's such a strange gift, and she feels especially lonely, and especially sort of rejected by the group in this case. And she's back to watching late night TV, and this cream, this lotion that was given out as a present by the party runner to everyone, this aloe glow, she sees a commercial for it on TV, and she starts using it, and it immediately gives her a reaction. In fact, she uses it at the party, and she gets like a red kind of rash reaction at the party, and they awkwardly kind of like get rid of her because she's clearly not feeling very well. So it's like an excuse to just kick her out. With you know, being nice about it, but it's all kind of phony and fake, and it feels, you know, it feels a bit mean spirited under the surface. But the main horror part of it, and kind of her big actor of the episode, not I mean the husband character, because she has a husband. This is the other thing. Like, it almost surprised me when she had a husband. I wasn't expecting that early on, because it kind of felt like the type of character who wouldn't have that. But it adds an extra layer that she has a husband played by Martin Starr, who likes her for who she is, and is kind of this voice that's trying to prop her up, and like, you know, is concerned about her when she is going. He ends up being this obstacle to her path to this perceived beauty that she wants. So which ultimately leads in a very, very violent, comically violent in a way. Not in this overly brutal. It's not like a Terrifier 2 death, but when she kills her husband and like stabs him in the forehead with a scalpel, like the sound of it and the way he's just sort of like got blood dripping down his face until she comes and kills him with an axe. This felt very Shining to me, actually. Maybe it's because she's got a little bit of a Shelley Duvall look to her, the actor here, at least how she's made up in the episode. She was reminding me of Shelley Duvall, and she's like going around the house with the axe at one point early on because she thinks there's an intruder, because she's hearing the noise. Yeah, like, and then she kills her husband with the axe ultimately at the end of the episode. I was getting some Shining vibes, even though the plot doesn't really like factor into it. Maybe you could argue there's a correlation in that the way she kind of is overtaken with this obsession is kind of like how Jack in The Shining becomes obsessed with like what the ghosts are telling him to do and stuff. I don't know, maybe you could compare something there, but anyway, what I'm getting to is that Dan Stevens is in the episode, and he plays like the Aloe Glow man, as he's credited as, but he's in the commercial for the Aloe Glow, and he starts talking directly to to Stacey and starts telling her that she needs the Algo, that the reaction just means that it's working and that she has to get more. And she does order more, and she talks to the TV, and it's kind of like this, whether it's in her head or I mean, I think it is in her head, but like that's how you would read it probably. But this idea that these late night commercials and all these things telling you that you have to be beautiful are convincing you into talk. And there's a great scene actually where after she's ordered some and like she's even worse and her skin's peeling off and she looks terrible and she's talking to the commercial late night again. There's a great thing where he gives, he puts his hand on the screen and she puts her hand on the screen and he's talking to her and he's propping her up and saying all that. He's like a cult leader. That's kind of what he sounds like, as he's got this like bleach blonde hair and he looks kind of ridiculous. It's a very good performance. He's really intriguing, but he just, when she asks for advice and said it's not working, he just ends with, use more Algo, and it just cuts off. It's like very cynical and very kind of like, oh, this is just like the manipulative voice in her head that's telling her to do this. It really feels like the little devil on her shoulder telling her to do something that she doesn't need. She doesn't really need it or want or should want it, but the voice is there telling her to. So yeah, that's the bit. I mean, that's obviously where how it really kicks into high gear of what the episode is doing. And then the big visual element that people are going to remember from this episode, the quote unquote monster, if you will. Although I appreciate this episode feels so different from the previous episodes, which I really like. We're really in like proper anthology territory now, where I feel like we're getting a nice variety. And the lotion that she orders, like she gets a big box of it, and like it starts oozing out the box, like in the basement, and then eventually like it's like a puddle and like a lump starts forming. It's almost, and it creates a being. It's like there's a, like think of the goo from Ghostbusters 2, or even like when the T-1000 forms out of the liquid metal after he's been exploded in Terminator 2. It's kind of like that, but it's got this really cool horror vibe to it, the music, and it's this kind of like horrific but like seduction quality to it, because when she walks out of the basement and she sees this kind of, it's kind of like a gooey wax figure of a female body. And she goes up to it, but it's kind of like looking at her, and then she ends up kissing it. And she's been seduced by this like perfect version of herself that she thinks exists, that's been sold to her through this product. It's after this where she ultimately goes to kill the husband, and then the wax or the lotion figure melts into the bathtub, and she goes and takes a bath in the goo. And when she gets out of the bath, like, we get the cover of, I don't know if the song's called I Believe in Miracles, but that's the main lyric everyone knows from it. It might be called something different, but it's like a cover of that song with a good drum beat that kind of has her sort of like wiping the goo away and the lotion away and like seeing herself as the beautiful, perfect version of her. And all of this is really hypnotic. It's really surreal. It's got a good kind of vibe to it. It feels so strong and confident in its direction, which I think, like I said, is the biggest asset to this episode, is just how confident it feels. And then she stuffs her husband. She does taxidermy on her husband and leaves the house. She's got her sunglasses on and her fancy dress, and she's left him sitting at the couch like he always does. And this is the thing, is that she's left him sitting watching the TV, because that's always what he would do when he'd come in. He'd always come in, microwave some food in the microwave. That's how you microwave food. You know what I'm trying to say? It would always be like chicken wings or something like that. And that's what she eats at the start of the episode as well. She puts some food in the microwave, and it's kind of like really painting that she's unhappy with her life, and that she's unhappy with this mundane life that she's kind of like slotted into, and she's seduced by this glamour that she's been sold by a product, and the feeling alienated by the peers that she has. But this idea that she doesn't want her husband to be a thinking, thoughtful person who, maybe you can critique some of the things he says to her, but he does seem to generally have like, the best of intentions with her, and like the advice he wants to give and try to prop her up. But she doesn't want that. She doesn't want an obstacle to what she perceives as what she wants for herself anymore. So all she wants is the visual of her husband to sit there static, and when she goes into work at the end and everyone's looking at her all like, oh my god, you're so beautiful, and she starts gossiping with them, and she starts just lavishing in the attention she's getting, It's like this is what she wanted and she succeeded. So it's kind of like you could almost read that she gets her happy ending in a way, but there's just that final, shot, which is the close up. Again, she's very uncomfortable close to the camera. She has that feeling of being too close to us, and she's just laughing and smiling and being part of the conversation. She's in this state of euphoria. There's just this gold like color behind her. But there's these little breaks, there's these little cracks in her demeanor where between the smiles, between the laughter, there's these little moments of like pain. Almost like now she has to keep this up. Now to maintain this, she has to keep going. And it's almost this idea that this was like this dream that was sold to her was really just like a facade that was covering up whatever real problems she had, or whatever real problems she might have like been feeling in her marriage with like just the same old thing over and over again. Maybe there was other things that she had to really solve that was a deeper thing than just this, which is, there's that, it's often talked about this idea of like people masking what they're really going through with physical or superficial solutions, which are this just what would you call it, placebo effect, effectively. This placebo of, oh, everything's fine because I'm keeping up all these things. And it kind of sounds like the other women in some ways are kind of covering up maybe things that they're unhappy with in their marriages or whatever by mocking others for their problems, by obsessing over their superficial qualities rather than dealing with whatever other things they should be caring about or whatever. This unhealthy coping mechanism. And I think that's kind of what the pain in between those smiles at the end represents. And also you could argue the realization that she's killed her husband, and maybe there's some regret over that. But this idea that she's now forced into trying to maintain this, and that falling behind would mean, falling from this grace, and the pressure to keep that up, I think might be part of it in there as well. So there's a lot of meaning in this episode. It's clearly got a subject that it's really focusing on and really talking about, and I think it's only strengthened because it does focus on that. The only critique I would really give it is that it is maybe a bit too long and takes a little bit to get to the meat of the story. There's maybe just a few too many instances of her scratching herself and like watching the late night TV again. You could probably condense that down to fewer instances and just made it a tighter episode. But it didn't drag on too much, I would say. I don't think it hurt it too much. And the performances from the lead, she's very good. Kate Micucci, I want to say her name pronounced. She is very good in this role. She seems like perfect for it. Her body language, her uncomfort, it's got that kind of like cringe quality to it. Some of the situations, like see when she's at the Secret Santa party and it's building up to like her interjecting or her giving her present, you feel that uncomfortable, like, oh god, this is going to be humiliating quality to it, where you're feeling that cringe and it's really sinking its teeth in. So it's a very different kind of horror to like, oh, there's something spooky, or there's an axe wielding maniac who's about to chop someone's head off. It's a very social, uncomfortable horror. But it absolutely is horror, and I think it handles that very well. And I think she plays that great. And then the other roles are filled out very well, and all play their parts. So, a very good episode. I'm actually not sure if I like this more or less than the autopsy. I think the autopsy was a really cool episode, especially the last like 10-15 minutes of it, which really did some cool stuff and was a very different type of horror from this. I was toying with the idea of doing like a rankings video at the end of this show when I've watched them all, and I might still do that. And so maybe I'll keep it to myself where I think I'll slot things in together with each other now. Now that we're getting to the point where I've had a couple of really good episodes, so but no, I like this one a lot. So I would recommend it. Especially if you're picking and choosing the episodes, absolutely check out The Outside. Which may not be for everyone, but I do think it is very strong in what it's doing, and feels very confident. So, and it was cool to have an episode set at Christmas, which is really nice. When again, like the idea of like Christmas being this thing where we all want to keep up the appearance of Christmas and the magical quality by putting up decorations and the lights, but there's this like cynical undertone that it's all about, glossing over what we're really going through, and it's about making money and all that. And we all know that, but I think it's perfect to fit that with the plot that it's doing in the character arc or character tragedy arc that it's doing in the episode. So There you go, that's The Outside. Let me know what you thought of this one in the comments below, and you can support everything that we do by hitting like and subscribing. All those things help, and of course financially you can support us by going over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and subscribing over there and supporting on a monthly basis. Or if a one-time thing's more your thing, then you can hit the super thanks button. But any and all help is appreciated. I thank you a lot. If you like some horror conversation, check out the horror podcast that I do with Tim, Streams After Midnight, over in Mail Fuzz Movies, or your podcast app if you want to search for it on there. We just did a huge 2-hour discussion on Terrifier 2 because it was a really interesting movie. So thank you very much for joining me. It is a pleasure. I will see you next time. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?